video driving, but I decided not to since that was found to be bothersome by a few people. So what I want to do in this video is share some background and some context for some of the reasons why I say some of the things that I say and just share some funny stories because many times over the years people requested more of a personal human element for things and not just my usual dry, rational approach. So I'm going to provide context for that and show that basically, at least from what I've seen in America, whether it's left wing or whether it's right wing or wherever we find ourselves in, people in general tend to be pretty conformist and largely just herd-like in their behavior and their outlook, which is just normal. I think that's just naturally built into how we operate. It's a natural part of our organism we are massively social creatures and we get our identity through relating to others and through our group. That's just totally normal. I think for whatever reason, I was just exposed to pretty pretty strong isolation from a pretty young age, so that perhaps shaped my nervous system, gave me a slightly different perspective on certain things. So what I'm going to do is go through, I guess I'll go back all the way to junior high or elementary school and kind of work my way up to modern times. So basically, in starting from the kind of the beginning, at least that I can remember strongly enough, is let's say elementary school, end of elementary school, when AOL and CompuServe and the internet was first becoming a thing. I was very fascinated by this, and I was spending a lot of time on there and in chat rooms, chatting with people from all over the country because I thought that was amazing and interesting and fascinating that you could chat with people that didn't live in a different place than you and you could learn about what their life was like. So of course, that's what I was into and that's what was fun. But most of the reactions that I got from people was, "Oh, you're crazy, you're a loser, you're weird. Why are you talking to people on the internet that you don't know? Like that's creepy." Um, Hey, thanks for showing up. So that was the first thing, and I'm just thinking like, okay, guys. But now fast forward, basically everyone talks to people online all the time, anyways. So there was that, and then I remember I got into kind of making my own websites, making my own blogs, and like putting my thoughts on the internet. And again, people were like, "You're crazy, you're a loser. Why would you do that?" And then I was really interested in computers and stuff and was like, oh, maybe I want to do this for my career. People were like, oh, there's no money in it. Like, just do something real with your life. Why would you waste your life with something like that? Turns out they were all completely wrong because the world is the way they are, way it is now. And also, I can remember around that time, and even earlier, probably all the way going back to like second, third, fourth grade, I really liked hip hop and rap music, Tupac and Notorious B.I.G. and Bone Thugs and a bunch of other people. And I was, of course, then made fun of, and I was called the N word, but with a W, which I won't say because I don't want to get canceled or censored on YouTube. But that's what people called me, and they're like, "Oh, you just listen to that music because you like want to be black." This is what literally people were saying to me. And I'm just like, I don't know, I just like the music. I don't really care about this whole racial thing. It's just interesting and cool to me. So then fast forward in that 2 or 3 year period, everyone starts doing the exact same thing. Everyone's listening to rap music. But then by that time I'd already went the other way and was like, oh, I'm gonna listen to rock music or whatever is the opposite that people were doing that they were making fun of me for doing for the last few years. And then now, of course, hip hop and rap is like pretty mainstream, and most people, at least in my age bracket, listen to quite a lot of it. But again, just another thing so far, three things that I was doing when people are like, "You're crazy, you're weird," and it's like, okay, guys. And then fast forward, uh, I think I was also doing Napster and doing file sharing. And again, people are like, that's crazy. You're weird. You're a loser. Why would you do that? Why don't you get a real life? Why don't you get real interests? And then now, fast forward, look at the world we live in. And then let's see, moving forward. Um, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the overall theme, but it's also just my overall point is that I'm experiencing the same exact stuff now where I say things and do things. People are like, oh my God, you're crazy, you're weird, you're an asshole. But then it's like, okay, guys, let's give it time. I guarantee you, or at least I feel highly confident that this will pan out to be true. So, which is also why at a young age, I really just developed a deep skepticism for the things people say and why they say them, and why I generally have fairly little regard for most people's opinions. And there's maybe just a small handful of people on the planet that I genuinely respect and I genuinely listen to and I genuinely value their opinion and their perspective on things. Most everyone else, I'm just going to be polite or kind, and that's that. Um, so fast forward to like high school-ish age. Yeah, that's another great example of it as well, which I'll get to in my timeline. So, early high school, I was getting really interested into plant medicines and weed and hemp and all these kinds of things. Um, and of course, same thing. You're crazy, you're insane, you're ruining your life, you're a loser. Like, but now fast forward, everyone's like, "Hey, man, what do you think about plant medicines?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You should have maybe asked me like 20 years ago." Um, Sounding quite arrogant here. Great. And another example of exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I guess I'm just saying what's true and what has been my life experience. I don't think that it makes me special or unique or different or better than anyone else, because actuality, my regard for myself is pretty low most of the time, which is why I'm always constantly trying to improve. I'm just saying things that are true based on my life experience to illustrate points because I'm a human being. I'm not sure exactly what else I'm supposed to pull from aside from my life experience, since that's what I have. And I assume that's what every other person is pulling from because that's what they have since they're using their nervous system and they're relating to the world through their identity because that's how we function in the world. So if saying things that occurred and are true means arrogance, then I accept those charges. But I don't believe that it makes me better or worse than anyone else. I'm just trying to learn from my own experience, share a perspective, and then maybe other people can benefit from that as well. I mean, I guess I could invent hypothetical scenarios or quote some other shit that I don't have actual real world experience. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm literally a guy on YouTube who's been making YouTube videos for 15 years. If you want to call that arrogant or self-involved or self-centered or whatever else, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, I mean, that's fine. That's your opinion. I don't really know what you expect that statement outcome to be. Like, I'm going to say, oh my God, this person that I don't know that I've never met that I have no idea said I'm arrogant because I'm telling stories from my life. Okay, okay, guys, never mind. Live stream over. Uh, I'm supposed to apologize? I don't know. Like, what is the outcome that someone expects for that um, to say? Like, that doesn't really make sense. I'm not like tooting my own horn. I'm just saying my life experience because to the fact of the matter is, everything I'm sharing with i- in this thing was actually quite painful and was not a pleasant thing to go through. So if me saying like, here's painful emotional experiences that I went through in my life makes me arrogant, okay. But like I guess if I came on and I was like, look guys, I basically uh yeah, I honestly oh yeah, I tuned in when you said you only value very few people's opinions. I mean, to me that's just common sense. So why I say that is if you had a plumber come to your house, would you take financial advice from them? Would you say, "Hey, I got $100,000 liquid cash that I need to distribute that I can get the most return on. So let me ask my plumber or my gardener." No, you're going to go and find the person with that skill set, with that experience, which means you're not going to respect or value basically anyone's opinion. And if someone with no money or someone who lost a bunch of money came to you and said like, "Look, bro, I'm going to help you invest this money properly." then that would, in my opinion, be kind of dumb because they don't have the experience for you to take their opinion seriously, which is the definition of like authority and respect. If you have respect and give everyone authority, respect and authority mean nothing because those things should be earned based on merit and behavior and activities. So that's basically all I'm referring to. If that common sense is arrogance, then again, I accept those charges. But at least for me personally speaking, how I choose to live my life is if I'm speaking on certain subject matters, I'm typically only going to value someone's opinion if they have an equal or greater knowledge or experience level than myself on that thing. So if that makes me arrogant, that's fine. But it's just common sense in the way I see it. So, anyways, getting back to the point of me, I guess, being arrogant and telling stories from my life. So I remember, yeah, plant medicines. So this was for me personally, it's probably like 2000, 2003, 2004, deep into like plant medicines, plant healing, plant connections, weeds, shrooms, like all the things, right? And then of course everyone's like, "Oh, you're crazy, you're a loser, you're an asshole, you're ruining your life." And then now, fast forward, everyone's like, "Bro, have you heard about weed and mushrooms and ayahuasca and plant medicines and shamanism?" And I'm just like, should have got at me 20 years ago when I was telling you guys about it and you told me I was an idiot and I was an asshole. Um, so let's see. Then around that time, I was also getting into yoga and meditation and like vegetable juicing and eating organic and just basic wellness. Again, you're an idiot, you're an asshole, you're crazy, there's no money in this, no one cares about this stuff. Now look, massive, huge industries. Um, so I guess, yeah, fast forward, another example, um, when I wanted to quit college and start my first business, again, everyone's like, "Oh, it's a terrible idea. You shouldn't do it. That's risky. You're stupid. You're crazy." And then when I wanted to pivot business to go online and get on social media through blogging and all these things, people were like, "Oh, you're crazy. You're an idiot. It's stupid. No one cares about this. Social media is a joke. No one's going to care about social media." And then look what happened. And then I wanted to start an online business. "Oh, you're crazy. No one cares about. No one's going to buy shit online." And then turns out, look at fucking e-commerce, massive. So those are all experiences and as a caveat, we could say that I was living in Midwest America, which you could say, okay, stereotypically, it's not the most open-minded, forward-thinking place, of course. Um, but what I saw is after I moved to Portland and moved out to the West Coast and met a lot of West Coast people and spent time on the coast and traveled all over the country and met people and then had a YouTube channel and talked to people all over the world, I realized that same mechanic and the same mindset is just kind of throughout humanity. It doesn't matter if you're left wing, right wing, you're religious, you're spiritual, you're progressive, because I went into all these different arenas and I encountered the same exact kind of thing where it's like go to, I don't know, a meditation thing, and I'm like, yeah, guys, I don't think A, B, and C is actually occurring. Or you say you're interested in meditation, but really you just like your imagination and your feelings, which isn't meditation. And of course, everyone's like, "You're crazy, you're an asshole, you're mean." I'm like, okay. Um, so I mean, I've already told a lot of those stories recently. This is just another continuation on. But the point is, this is just informing why I tend to not really take people seriously, and basically just it's a tricky thin line you have to walk because on some ways you obviously have to be open to the outside world. You have to be open to feedback. You have to be open to all of those things because we are social creatures. We are tribal. We are kind of all conformist to a degree. And we get our identity through how we relate to others and how they reflect that back to us. That is all true and that has to be there. But on the flip side, there also is the fact of if you look at anyone that's done anything in life that was in any way, shape, or form different, creative, inventive, um, or anything that moves something forward, people are always shitting on it and shooting it down. And if that sounds weird, just look at history. So it's a really thin line that people have to walk, and there's a lot of people that get it wrong, and a lot of people go to the extremes and pay the price for it. But at least for me, I've always tried to, well, actually, no, I've had phases where I always felt I was a certain way and saw things in a certain way, but then, when you're a kid or you're a teen, or basically everyone in your environment tells you something that contradicts what you actually feel and see and know to be true, that can do a number on your reality. But then if you have at least some degree of courage to test your ideas, test your beliefs, test your ideals to see whether or not they're actually true. And I think that's the useful bit is, and that's why I always recommend people, cool you have beliefs, cool you have ideas, cool you have ideals, cool you have things that you wish the world was a certain way. Okay, go put them to the test. See if they're actually real, see if they're actually legitimate, or if it's just maybe you are being ridiculous, or maybe you are actually right and everyone else is kind of wrong. Not everyone else, but maybe whatever that certain group of people, maybe they are actually wrong. But then you also have to actually investigate, well, why are they saying that? Where are they coming from? What is their intention and how do they arrive at those beliefs? Which I get takes a lot more work and a lot more time and a lot more energy, which is much more difficult than just emotionally reacting. Um, so yeah, most people talk shit when I went vegan nearly 13 years ago, still waiting to die of a protein deficiency. It's taking too long. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like I was vegan for a number of years as well. I'm not now. I don't think I ever will be again. But also at the same time, if it works for someone else, I'm not going to knock it. I trust that people are adults and they are their own people and they can make their own decisions for what's best for them for their own life. Um, and that's that. We can each have our own our own beliefs and our own lifestyle, and that's fine. I don't expect people to agree or do what I do. I actually don't really recommend it. Um, but I think, yeah, I just think that's another way people can get a little bit rigid, is they just think sometimes that there's only one way of doing things. So ultimately, I think what I think and feel what I think and do what I do for myself. And I honestly don't really care what other people do. If they want to listen to what I have to say, that's fine. If you want to do something different, that's fine. It's your life. As long as you're not harming anyone, really, it's fine by me. Um, so yeah. Um, do you think it's wrong to leave behind other people like family or friends because you value your beliefs and spiritual path more? I mean, I think that's just an adult decision that people have to arrive at their own discernment in their own life. It's not really an easy blanket statement thing. Um, it's obviously not easy. The thing is like most things in life that are meaningful and worthwhile are difficult and will require some sacrifice. But the fact is, people avoid difficulty, they avoid sacrifice, they avoid discipline, dedication, hard work, discomfort, then they don't really do or accomplish much a lot of the time. Which sounds weird to say out loud, and it's weird that it's bothersome to people, but just look at life. Because the thing is, just the like the other day, someone was like, "Oh, you're trauma dumping. Like your video is everything you're saying is like kind of sound and logical and rational, but you're trauma dumping and whatever, whatever." I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you saying other than confirming everything I said in the video? But it's like if I'm not sharing my experience in a fairly non-emotional, neutral way, like I'm not here crying or like yelling at people or dumping my emotional energy on people and being like, "Ah," like I'm sharing stories and life experiences to illustrate points and lessons. So is that fucking trauma dumping? So this is a kind of reiterates my whole point is that what I can tell you from doing YouTube and being somewhat public facing for 15 years, this is also another example of why I don't really take people's opinions seriously. Because if I just make strictly kind of like scholarly, rational, theoretical videos, people are like it's dry, it's boring, and you're wooden, and we don't know who you are as a person, and it's not relatable. Then if I use human examples in my own life and my own stories, now I'm trauma dumping or I'm repressed, or I'm a toxic male, or if I do short form content because people are like complaining of the long form content, then now I'm compromising and it doesn't have substance and value. Then if I do the long form content, I could have done that a lot better, could have been a lot shorter, should have been a lot more concise, and I didn't need to say all these different things. Do videos about critiquing different things, people are like, "Oh, that's negative, you're mean, you're just critical, you're just coming off as an asshole. Why don't you just offer like positive solutions?" So then I do videos about positive solutions. "Oh, it's boring, I can't do it, it's hard, it's difficult," or just people don't watch or engage at all. Do videos about social content. "Oh, why are you talking about social content? You're a health guy." Do videos about health guy. "Oh, you're just trying to sell products and you're trying to put your ideas on us." So basically, my point is, it doesn't really matter what you do. People are going to have a problem with it regardless. If you have any degree of solidity or opinion or fabric, people will try to shoot it down. They will use psychological doublespeak kind of psychoanalysis terms. They will use some kind of spiritual mumbo jumbo shit, or they will use some kind of political ideology or just straight religious ideology of like, "Oh, you're not a saved, you don't even accept Jesus, so you're going to hell," and blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much all people have. Various forms of those, I guess, four defense mechanisms, or I guess just straight violence is an, I guess, oh 05. That's pretty much all people have, at least based on my limited experience to this of being on this planet for as long as I have been. So let's see. Why did you give up veganism? Honestly, I just was really skinny. I lost a lot of weight and it just was kind of over it. I had a lot of digestive issues. And also this was like 2008, maybe, or nine. So that's, I kind of just, I don't think it was quite as easy to be a vegan back then. Whereas now it's just, all depending on the city you live in, it's a lot easier. There's a lot more options. But also I will say, I think the plant-based meat is usually pretty disgusting and is highly processed. It includes a lot of inflammatory ingredients. So that to me, I'm not. And this is the other thing is people need to look into Bill Gates, how Bill Gates owns. I think he's the largest farm owner in America. How he owns an insane amounts of patents for genetically modified plants, and how he's massively financially invested in um, plant-based eggs and chicken and fake meat and all of these things, and how basically his foundation and his financial interests are massively shaping society and culture to eat this fake lab-grown food, and how eventually I think we will probably lose the freedom and the ability to eat actual real food. Um, so I think people, it's like I get the idea of caring about the planet and the animals, but if Bill Gates is literally behind it and only doing it out of fucking greed and corruption, then I start to have problems with it. Especially when you start actually looking into the data of all, which I don't actually care to get into because do what you got to do. But I'm just saying, people just can make up their own mind. Yeah, not really want. I don't really want to get into that further. In the past, you were talking about potentially moving to Asia. How settled do you feel in Portland at this point? Do you still think about that potential move? Um, yeah, I mean, I moved actually out of Portland a few years ago, maybe like 20 or 30 minutes out in the suburbs, and it's a lot better. The quality of life here is pretty good. Food's great. I have friends here that are great. The nature is great. The access is great. Hiking in the wintertime, being able to go to the coast, go to the mountains, go to hot springs. Met a lot of cool people. I've met a lot of obviously morons as well, but I've actually met a lot of really intelligent, open-minded, interesting people at the same time. And it is, despite all of its, yeah, exactly. I mean, the show is basically, Portlandia is basically a documentary, except that it's actually gotten a lot worse in many ways. So, yeah, I still think about the potential move, and I think I probably will make it at a certain point. I'm just trying to work on a few other ideas as well. Um, I may be having a few pivots coming up soon, so we'll see. I've had people come at me with all those tactics, and I just want to focus on my spiritual path and my studies, wouldn't mind being a monk. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I just arrived at those things because if I look back at 15 years of making YouTube videos, all the negative comments fall perfectly into those categories. Even videos yesterday, people are making those same exact comments. Because I'll make a video about a dynamic, and it never fails that someone responds with the exact dynamic that I described, but telling me that what I'm saying isn't true. So that's always a head scratcher. But I mean, I understand why they do it. It's the personal attack or whatever, which it's like, I think I'm one of the least emotional, most monotone, neutral, even people that I know. But yet, people are like getting so triggered and upset or so emotional. So I don't know. It's just the world. I mean, I look at other YouTubers and I see their comments. It's just the way it works. And I see just some of the vile, hateful things that other YouTubers get. And then I look at people that I respect or I regard as teachers that are online, and I see the comments on their videos and their content, and I'm like, yeah, this is just par for the course on this platform and across the internet in general. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the time, um, because it really takes no work to have an anonymous account and say horrible things to another person. But it takes a lot more work for that person to put their face out there, put their name out there, put their reputation out there, and then develop the whatever degree of skill set to be able to communicate their ideas in a way that's at least hopefully interesting or people will at least hopefully listen to and hopefully understand. It's a lot more risk, a lot more investment on that side of it versus just having an anonymous YouTube account and saying horrible things to a stranger. Um, so that's what always stands out to me when people say these things to me via comments or email or whatever. I'm like, I guess in their head they think they are gonna make me look bad, but in my opinion, they make themselves look quite bad. Because it's like, what kind of person wants to just what like what kind of person watches something that a person they say they don't like, they don't agree with, and they say this person is not a good person or whatever. So that's all true, or they say it's true, and now they're going to spend all this extra time typing out all of this stuff to the person and then trying to engage with that person. To me, if I'm on the internet or watching a video and I don't agree with the person or I don't like them, I just accept that maybe I don't agree with them and I move on with my life. I don't have to be like, oh my God, I'm going to show them. Let me just make this comment. It's like, who cares? Like, really, guys. Um, So yeah. Anyways, those were, I think, most of the stories that I wanted to tell. And the point that I was trying to make is that yes, those occurred however many years ago, but the same exact dynamics are still occurring. If I go back to videos I was making in 2010 or 11, where I was talking about how a lot of the health people who claimed they were spiritual were actually at their core just really conservative Christians. They just didn't realize it. And then, sure enough, fast forward over the years, the majority of those people flipped and came out as like right wing Christians. And I'm like, I know. I've been saying that you were that person the whole time because that's your psychology. You were just expressing it through dietary, puritanical kind of ideas. Because if you look at the ideas of like puritanical religions and the obsession with purity and cleanliness, and then you take those ideas and translate them over to diet and lifestyle, that's where a lot of the natural health stuff comes from. And that's what I was saying for years. And people were like, you're crazy, you're mean, you're an idiot, you're wrong. And then, of course, time proved it to be true. Or I said that the core driver for a lot of these people is a sense of control, meaning maybe they had an experience in their life where they felt a loss of control. So they grip and cling on to this thing that they feel like they can control, and then they obsess and fixate on it, basically to their detriment. I was saying that people are like, you're wrong, you're an idiot, you're crazy. But of course, that's obviously true. And we can look at orthorexia and many other manifestations of that. Um, and then even I was making videos about scientism and how science was turning into a cult and how it brainwashed people, and how, of course, the scientific method and scientific if inquiry was obviously useful and obviously beneficial and obviously a great thing, but at the same time, flipping people into kind of like a cult-like dynamic where then it just becomes the opposite of itself, and then it basically just became the exact religious dogma that it was trying to escape from. Because basically that's we go back through history, there was a point in time where like science was under the umbrella of the church. And then eventually they were like, this is oppressive, this religion, so we need to break free of it. And then I'm like, they're still operating under the same dynamics. And then sure enough, here we go. The last 3 years, we've seen more and more examples of exactly that same dynamics. But I was talking about it in great detail and specificity. People were like, you're an idiot, you're an asshole, you're wrong, you're crazy, you're anti-science, or all these things. Then COVID happened, and the COVID happened, and then the climate crisis thing keeps shape shifting and getting pushed around, and many different examples. And now where all the gender stuff is part of it is happening as well. And it's exactly what I was describing. And people are like, "Oh, you're wrong. You're an idiot." And then even I think even in 2020, I remember I was talking to my parents, and I was just telling them jokingly. I was like, "Yeah, aliens are probably gonna. It's gonna be aliens, another pandemic, or the climate crisis." I was like, this is what's gonna occur because this event is basically just a cover for a larger chain of events that's going to pan out. Sure enough, all of those chains of events have panned out in terms of like massive redistribution of wealth, massive inequality, massive social divide, massive social decay, massive social and economic um, divide that's occurred in redistribution. Um, and then when COVID first happened, my first thought was, this is going to be like 9/11, but just for for our health, basically. So it just so many things. And then now, fast forward, I'm making videos critiquing psychedelics, critiquing therapy, uh, pop psychology, and like pop spirituality, and these different institutions, and people are shocked of like, oh, why would you say that? You're mean, you're wrong. But I almost guarantee you, we can look back at what I'm saying in those videos, and in a few years, they will be pretty true, and many of them already are quite true. Um, but again, I get that this is bothersome for people that someone could have an opinion based on their life experience, based on their own research, and then say it to the world. I guess that's bothersome for people. Um, but I'm just saying this has been my experience, and it's been quite fascinating to watch. But I understand that these things are difficult. People are stressed, and I think really what happened, at least for me personally, is that I really bought into a lot of the stuff, like all the plant medicine, pop psychology, pop therapy, pop spirituality, all of the stuff I bought in and really lived it and breathed it for years. and then started to see the problems, started to see the negative side effects and the consequences and the issues it was creating in my life, and then decided to move out of it. And then what started to really create the conflict is when I was actually doing legitimate Neigong or legitimate internal arts practices, and it started to strongly reformat my system, then all of these things started to become a lot more clear. So then I automatically became, to some degree, in kind of in conflict with a lot of the false institutions, right? But had I actually just stayed on board in the delusion in my own like mental illness, then there would be no conflict because it would be just still stuck on their hamster wheel chasing all of these things and following the fads and following the trends and whatever else. And there would be no conflict. But as soon as you break away from it and try to actually be grounded and rooted and centered, then now you're going to start experiencing conflict because coincidentally, when I made that decision and went in that direction, it seemed like modern society and culture in America went the other complete opposite. Starting in 2016 with, when Trump was president, that's where things started to really amplify up. And then starting, 2020 and pandemic, that just really took it to a whole new level. Um, so yeah, I mean, I could keep going with examples. I've already given a bunch of examples in a bunch of other videos, so I won't do it. Um, So yeah, I just wanted to share some more stuff, kind of like from my teenage years and childhood, because I think ultimately speaking, at least for myself, I feel like I'm kind of just the same person that I was when I was a little kid to varying degrees. Um, Obviously, yeah, I've matured and become a functional adult, but I feel like the core dynamics, the core whatever things that we're operating are still there to at least some degree. Because how I know that's true is I can look back and see pretty clear chains of events and clear dynamics. But again, I make videos, I say these things, and then predictably, I get comments, oh, you just need to find Jesus and then you'll be fine, or you need to do plant medicines to heal your shadow, or different permutations of like pop psychology, new age ideas, like, well, if I experience a recurring thing, I realize it's within myself, and I must resolve within myself because Carl Jung said there's some shit. So now we all built a bunch of stuff on some stuff Carl Jung said that we don't really understand. Um, or oh, you're repressed, or oh, you're toxic male masculinity, or you have white privilege, or oh, any number of different other permutations, which are all predictable responses, or you're arrogant, mean asshole because you said something that I don't like or I don't agree with when it's like I'm not like um so yeah, this is just these responses get so predictable at a certain point that I almost like feel like I'm on a hidden camera show. Um or like I'll have a conversations with friends and I'll say it just gets more and more clear to me that people can literally only think what the news tells them to think. And then if I say something that's not on the news, they're like, "Oh, that sounds crazy." And I'm like, "See what I mean? You literally can't think of anything other than what the news tells you to think. Even though the position or the facts that I put forth might be able to stand alone, you literally can't think." So, like, when I've told stories that contain obvious moral conflict or obvious wrongdoing, people are, because of their all of the defense mechanisms and programming, they literally can't think or see a situation in any other way except than that limited, standardized view, which is kind of the opposite of all of the beliefs and ideals that people tend to put forth, which obviously tends to create a little bit of conflict, as you might imagine. But it's like, uh, yeah. Um, yeah. Anyways, so do you have any good books on Nagong, or did you ever have a Sifu? So yeah, that's not really things you can learn from a book, and you can find other videos on my channel where I've stated who I recommend as teachers and what I recommend as a legitimate source of information. I have podcasts on it, I have videos on that. You definitely check that out. Um, yeah, cognitive dissonance is a real bitch. Yeah, I think I guess it just it becomes self-defeating because people get into this mindset where they think personal experience is completely invalid, which that would invalidate their own opinion, which so the whole thing is self-defeating. Or they say that's your opinion or your experience, which is like that's obvious. It's like if I went outside and I started sweating because it's 100 degrees and someone's like, "Yeah, bro, it's just the sun." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's summer. It's 100 degrees outside." Like that's not a profound or like so I think what happens is people they get into these like standardized view systems and they say things that I guess appear intelligent or smart, but are oftentimes completely wrong or just stating obvious implicit things. Like if I say something as an example, and someone's like, "Bro, you're just saying that because you're speaking English." And I'm like, "Well, I am speaking English." Okay. That's not like a I mean, yeah, if you want to start talking about like the syntax, the subject predicate structure, and how different languages have different structures and how those different structures can do these different things, okay, sure. But that doesn't make something invalid or not. But the fact is, if you're so stuck in a standardized view that you can't see what the thing is actually referring to, i.e., actual real life experience. So then all you have is standardized view. So you and I just I think you can see this if you ask people just simple questions. Usually everything just falls apart or just is more layers of defensiveness, hostility, and attacking, which again is not like a strong position to operate from. Um, so yeah, anyways, that was the point of the live stream. I just wanted to share those random stories. And I guess illustrate how those are dynamics that I experienced as a child, and I still see, I still see in the world today. And whether it was in a right-wing Christian conservative environment or left-wing liberal progressive, I see the same exact dynamics. People have their standardized view that usually prevents them from actually experiencing real life and real reality, and instead all they experience is their view. Why they like the view is because the view gives them kind of like emotional stimulation or emotional like hits. So that's why they like it. But they're not actually experiencing life in any degree of neutrality or even, the real thing, which this is not my idea. I mean, this is not something I invented. I happen to arrive at it from my own experience, but it also happens to be the foundational teaching of like every religion and spiritual tradition. The first line of the Tao Te Ching, the way that can be weighed is not the eternal way, or the way that can be spoken is not the eternal whatever. It's kind of speaking to this dynamic within people that when you get to the point of, but the thing is, people erroneously assume, oh, that means you can't talk about it. Oh, that means you can't put it into words. Oh, that means spirituality is beyond concept and beyond words and beyond blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, kinda, maybe, sorta, but perhaps it's actually referring to a specific dynamic since it's actually kind of a guidebook and an educational instructional manual. It's just you have to have the right mindset to actually be able to understand what it's actually referring to. And at least in that instance, this is the process that it's referring to because as we become adults, as we get older, we adopt all these standardized reviews and habituated responses that we basically just don't experience reality at all. So If you just exist in the standardized view and be sure to push people's emotional buttons and give them the stimulation they require, you'll be fine and you won't experience conflict. But if you move out of that, then now you have a different set of choices. What's the video on the Nagong teachers called? Okay, so basically Adam Meisner, Damo Mitchell, or Bruce Francis. Those are the people that I would recommend in terms of Nagong or internal arts that you can actually access online. Keep in mind that within all of these arts, there's a hierarchy of practices and a hierarchy of teaching. And what's taught publicly is usually a public version. And as you move up the hierarchy, typically people get different versions of things, different layers of teachings, because people are getting teachings and information and practices relative to their level or their skill level. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Another thing that I'll mention that why I think, honestly, I'm at this point in my life, I recommend people just abandon spirituality. Well, I would say pop spirituality. Like, stop reading books, stop watching this crap online, because the vast majority of it's just taking people in the wrong direction and making them less healthy and less competent, less efficient, less effective, more dull, more weak, more confused within inside themselves because it is not developing the qualities in a correct manner. It's not really developing much of anything at all, other than maybe allowing people some relief from their emotional discomfort or some degree of disembodiment or detachment. Which why I say that is because you actually listen to what people describe and what people experience. It's usually that, oh, I feel some relief or detachment from my emotional whatever, or I feel a little bit weird and lightheaded or fuzzy or somehow separate from my environment a little bit. So that's cool. It's like great. You're just talking about escapism or disembodiment. That's not spirituality. That's not making you a healthier, more effective person. It's actually the opposite. Because how I know that's true is because those people tend to become very obsessed with their emotions and very obsessed with their subjective experience, which again has nothing to do with becoming a better, healthier, more effective individual or really doing anything at all. So that's why I tend to not recommend it. Why I mention it is because it's just an absolute quagmire and clusterfuck of information. Why I say that is there's so many different types of teachings from so many different levels, from so many different source points, filtered through so many different people that it's just straight chaos. And also too, there are, like I was saying, there's a hierarchy of things. So maybe there's things that were only appropriate for people who were complete renunciates. But then, like, let's say people put that out into the world, that's not appropriate, and people can't do it. Um, so but then people try to do it, and it's the complete wrong thing for them because they're not renunciates. They don't live. They didn't completely renounce their identity and their family lineage and everything from their life. So it's not an appropriate uh, skill set or outlook or endeavor for them. But then they do it, and of course, it creates not good results. So it's just a lot of nonsense to sort through, which is why I don't really recommend it. But anyways, thanks to everyone that showed up and for asking questions and for listening to um, this diatribe that I've been on for the last 50 minutes. But thanks again, I really appreciate it, and hopefully there's been some value and some benefit. Um, I'm I'm anticipating there's probably going to be n- negative comments which fall into the five categories that I listed before because of the simple fact that I told stories about myself from my own life, and those stories had the position of making me look kind of good in a way, even though the experience for me personally was kind of negative and led to kind of social conflict and social isolation. But people will hear me talking about myself in a slightly positive manner, even though it was painful, and they will probably be like, "Oh, you're arrogant," or "You're an asshole," or whatever manner of the five categories of things that I outlined already before. But so that'll be interesting to take a look and see and see how that rolls in. But anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and hopefully you can find some value. Oh, and the last thing that I meant, and the reason why I was saying this is because now that I'm recommending people develop more solidity and develop more of a fabric and really start to develop other qualities within themselves. Again, it's you're crazy or you're mean, you're an asshole, all these things. But in reality, I'm doing it because I think this is what's going to be extremely useful, helpful, and beneficial for people over time because of the massive decay and dissonance and disembodiment and detachment and disassociation that's more or less becoming the social norm at this point. So if you want to actually survive and maintain sanity and health, you might want to cultivate some of the opposite characteristics, which is why I'm saying what I'm saying now. And the theme of the videos that I've been making over the last year is to try to lead people more in a direction of solidity and less of the societal decay and disassociation. But people want the disassociation and the decay typically, so it makes me, again, it creates conflict because it's not the emotional, it's instant gratification that people want here and now. So, of course, YouTube man bad. YouTube man bad. That's the reaction. Uh, anyways, thanks again for watching. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all your support. If you have any questions or comments or requests for subjects for me to cover in the future, feel free to put them in the comments and I will take note of it and make sure to include it.